Dubai's desert heat clung to me like a second skin. Perched on the weathered wooden pier, I kicked my sandals against the worn planks, watching a parade of expensive cars roll by. The drivers, mostly young men with sculpted haircuts and designer sunglasses, slowed down as they passed by, their gazes lingering a beat too long. "Nice view, huh?" A deep voice startled me. I whipped my head around to see a tall man with sun-bleached hair and a cocky grin leaning against the railing a few feet away. He exuded an air of entitlement that usually put me off, but tonight, for some reason, I didn't feel the urge to roll my eyes. "Yeah," I shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "Sunsets are pretty standard here, wouldn't you say?" He chuckled, a rich sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "Standard, maybe. But still impressive." He gestured towards the departing cars. "Those rides, on the other hand, definitely not standard." I followed his gaze. A cherry-red Ferrari screeched to a halt further down the beach, a blonde bombshell emerging from the driver's seat. "Nope," I agreed, a smirk playing on my lips. "Definitely not something you see every day." There was a flicker of surprise in his eyes, quickly replaced by amusement. "You don't seem too impressed by all this fancy stuff." "Honestly?" I leaned back on the railing, crossing my arms. "It gets old after a while. Everyone here seems to think the size of their bank account defines their worth." He raised an eyebrow. "So, what defines yours then?" The question caught me off guard. Money had always been a strange companion in my life. My father, a co-owner of a giant American chocolate company, was a jet-setting billionaire who was rarely home. I craved normalcy, which is why I took my mother's last name, Evans, and built a life for myself in Dubai after graduating Harvard with top honors. "Well," I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to reveal too much. "I guess I believe in hard work and building a life on your own terms." He studied me for a moment, his gaze holding a curious intensity. "Fair enough," he finally said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "The name's William, by the way." "Barbara," I replied, extending a hand. His grip was firm and warm, sending another jolt of electricity through me. One evening, as we sat by the pool at his luxurious hotel, sipping cocktails and watching the city lights twinkle into life, William dropped a bombshell. "My company is looking for someone with your skill set," he said casually. My head snapped up. "Your company?" "Yeah," he shrugged. "I work for a large investment firm back in the States. We're always on the lookout for talented people." He paused, his gaze holding mine. "So, what do you say? Interested in escaping the standard Dubai sunsets for a while?" My heart raced. The thought of leaving Dubai, of building a life for myself somewhere new, especially with William, was exhilarating. But a flicker of doubt crossed my mind. Leaving meant revealing my carefully constructed facade. "I don't know," I hedged. "It's a big decision." He leaned closer, his voice a low murmur. "I know. But hey, if you're up for an adventure, this could be a good one." He squeezed my hand gently. "Think about it, okay?" And so, with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, I took the plunge. Here's the tricky part: to maintain my facade, I couldn't just move in with William. I found a modest apartment in a regular neighborhood, far from the luxury condos he inhabited. I also decided to hold off on telling my father about my new life. He was a whirlwind of international business trips, and frankly, I wasn't sure how he'd react to my Dubai adventure, let alone my relationship with William. A few weeks after my arrival in the States, I started working at William's company. The job was challenging, but I thrived under the pressure. My intelligence and work ethic shone through, and I felt a sense of accomplishment I hadn't experienced in Dubai. One day I came home wanting to just relax on my old couch. But fate had other plans. Sitting on the rickety wooden chair in the corner, looking completely out of place in a space that screamed budget living, was my father. My jaw dropped, the stress of the day forgotten as pure shock flooded through me. "Dad?" I croaked, the word catching in my dry throat. What are you doing here?" A slow smile, that same sly smile I knew so well, spread across his face. "Well, Barbara," he drawled, his voice holding a hint of amusement. "It seems a man has a right to visit his own daughter, even in her humble abode." How did you find me?" I stammered, desperately searching for an explanation. He shrugged, a hint of pride flickering in his eyes. "Let's just say a father has his ways, especially when his daughter disappears to Dubai and then pops up working for a fancy investment firm across the ocean." My breath hitched. Somehow, he knew everything. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "I just needed a fresh start," I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. "A chance to build a life for myself on my own terms." He nodded, slowly. "I understand that," he said, his voice sincere. "But honey, pretending to be someone you're not, that's not the answer." Taking a deep breath, I decided to come clean. It was time he knew everything, even if it meant exposing my carefully constructed facade. Over the next hour, I spilled my guts, telling him about my life in Dubai, the job I'd secured, and most importantly, my relationship with William. He listened patiently, his expression unreadable. When I finished, a heavy silence settled between us. He studied me for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his face. It wasn't quite approval, but it wasn't disapproval either. All right, he chuckled, a hint of pride in his voice. "Looks like you've grown up, quite a bit. Just be careful, okay? This world can be a tough one." "I will," I promised, a sense of relief washing over me. A year flew by in a whirlwind of work and stolen moments with William. The pressure at the firm was intense, but I thrived under it. My intelligence and work ethic were finally being recognized, and a year later, I was promoted to associate partner, a huge step in the demanding world of investment banking. One evening, as we were cooking dinner in my tiny apartment, William still hadn't convinced me to move in. He got down on one knee, a dazzling diamond ring glinting in the candlelight. "Barbara," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "you're the smartest, most beautiful woman I know. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in my eyes. "Yes," I choked out, throwing my arms around him. In that moment, I knew I was the happiest woman alive. Wedding planning was a whirlwind. I opted for a simple ceremony on a secluded beach in the Maldives, just me, William, and the ocean breeze. There was no way I was having a lavish wedding after all my efforts to keep my past a secret. Still, I knew I had to call my father. "Hey, Dad," I said, my voice a mix of excitement and nervousness. "There's something I need to tell you." He chuckled on the other end of the line. "About time, kiddo. Spit it out. William, we're getting married." There was a long silence, then he spoke, his voice surprisingly serious. "Listen, honey," he said, "I'm thrilled for you, truly. But attending the wedding, it wouldn't be a good idea. Let's just say, it would raise a few eyebrows." My heart sank. Deep down, I knew he was right. His appearance would shatter the carefully constructed image I'd built. "Okay," I mumbled, forcing a smile. He cleared his throat. "And there's one more thing. William's a good guy, but you know how it is in this business. Prenup. Just to be safe, for both of you." I wasn't surprised by his suggestion. A prenup made sense, given our different backgrounds. "Sure, Dad," I agreed readily. Meeting William's family, however, was a different story. His mother, a woman whose wealth seemed to ooze from her perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes, took one look at me and her smile faltered. "William, darling," she drawled, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "you haven't mentioned your fiancé's profession." William, bless his oblivious heart, beamed. "She's an associate partner at a prestigious investment firm, Mum." Brilliant mind, the whole package. Her smile remained strained. "Investment firm, you say? How interesting." The rest of the evening was a series of thinly veiled digs about my background and pointed questions about a prenuptial agreement. I answered them calmly, refusing to be intimidated by her wealth or her disdain. Don't worry, Mrs. Thompson, I said, my voice cool and polite. We've already discussed a prenup. Both William and I agree it's the sensible thing to do. The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of surprise and something that almost resembled grudging respect. The wedding itself was perfect. Just me, William, the sound of the waves crashing on the shore, and a vow to spend the rest of our lives together. A few weeks later, back in New York, William surprised me with the keys to a stunning house in a quiet, upscale neighborhood. It wasn't a mansion, but it was more than enough for us. As we stood in the foyer, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked, a wave of happiness washed over me. Life hadn't turned out exactly as I'd planned, but it was better. I had a loving husband, a challenging career, and a future that was truly mine to build, one step at a time. The joy of my successes started to feel tinged with a strange bitterness. William's initial enthusiasm for my achievements seemed to wane with each accomplishment. He'd still offer a good job, but it lacked the warmth and pride that used to light up his eyes. Then came the merger. Months of work culminated in a deal that brought in a fortune for the company. I practically burst into William's office, eager to share my victory, only to find him staring at the numbers with a strange mix of surprise and disappointment. "You did good, babe," he finally managed, his voice tight. It felt like a compliment forced through gritted teeth. A cold fear prickled down my spine. Was my success somehow diminishing him? The thought was absurd, but the tension in the air was undeniable. Things weren't any better at home. My mother-in-law, a walking masterclass in passive aggression, took every opportunity to undermine me. Back in my day, she'd drawl, her perfectly manicured nails tapping a disdainful rhythm on the teacup. Wives took care of the house. Not, played at business. Then came the day William stormed in, his face thunderous. Before I could even ask what was wrong, he slammed a fat envelope on the table. "Severance package," he growled. "Apparently, this house needs a full-time manager. Cleaners, cooks, gardeners, all gone. Consider it your chance to finally find yourself at home." Anger flared hot within me, but it was quickly doused by a wave of desperation. I didn't want a divorce. I wanted the man I'd married back. Maybe, I thought, if I proved myself as a homemaker, if I created the perfect domestic haven, he'd see my worth again. Part of me wanted to call my father, to tell him, ask for help. But the bigger part recoiled. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. This mess was mine to clean up, and clean it up I would. A few months later, we went on a sea cruise. The sun beat down on the polished deck of William's yacht as we sailed out to sea. His mother, Mildred, draped in a ridiculous white pantsuit and enough diamonds to blind a pirate, was holding court with her gaggle of equally wealthy friends. They giggled like a coven of crows over flutes of champagne, their voices a grating chorus against the slap of the waves. William, ever the dutiful son, fawned over his mother, refilling her glass and laughing uproariously at her tired jokes. I forced a smile, trying to ignore the cold knot twisting in my stomach. As the day wore on, the champagne flowed freely, and Mildred's facade started to crack. Her smile became a sneer, and her once clipped pronouncements morphed into drunken slurs. "You know," she slurred, swaying towards me, her voice dripping with fake politeness, "it takes a special kind of woman to give up a perfectly good career to clean toilets." The other women cackled, their laughter like nails on a chalkboard. My cheeks burned, but I held my tongue. "Not tonight." William, oblivious to the tension, merely chuckled. "That's right, Ma. Barbara's a domestic goddess now." The evening continued in a similar vein. Every jibe, every snide remark from Mildred went unanswered by William, except with a weak attempt at a joke. I felt like a trophy wife on display, my silence misinterpreted as meekness. By nightfall, I'd had enough. As we approached a cluster of smaller islands, I approached the captain, a weathered old salt named Hank. "Hank," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I need to get off the boat." He raised an eyebrow, concern etched on his weathered face. "Here? In the middle of nowhere?" Yes, I said, my jaw set. Please, there's an island over there. Can you drop me off? Contact the Coast Guard on that island and let them know I'm here, Barbara Labert. A few minutes later, the yacht drifted to a halt near the chosen island. As I walked to the railing, purse clutched tightly in my hand, William finally noticed me. Where do you think you're going? He snapped, his voice laced with annoyance. Know where you want me to be, I shot back. Consider this marriage over. You and your precious mother are both unworthy. Mildred, fueled by the champagne and the sight of my defiance, squawked like a startled bird. You think you can just walk away? This is his money you've been leeching off of. William's face contorted with rage. He lunged for my purse, snatching it from my grasp. These are my credit cards, Barbara, he roared. Get out of here, on all fours if you have to. Mildred screeched, with delight. She'll be begging on that island by morning. I looked at them both, these two empty, cruel people, and felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe, I said, meeting William's gaze. But at least I'll have my dignity. William's yacht bobbed lazily at anchor, the strains of drunken laughter still spilling from the deck. I stood on the pier, the cool night air a welcome contrast to the stifling atmosphere on board. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, his uniform a stark contrast to the party atmosphere of the yacht. He strode purposefully towards the boat, his voice carrying across the water. Ahoy there! This here's a private island. Restricted access, you get my drift? His voice boomed with a practiced authority. William, still red-faced from his earlier tirade, leaned over the railing. What the, who are you? The man didn't waste words. Security detail. Looks like you folks got lost. Gotta be out of here within 2 hours, tops. William scoffed. 2 hours? We just got here. Besides, who says we gotta listen to you? The security guard, a man named Mark whom I'd discreetly tipped off earlier, a small act of rebellion that felt oh so sweet, squared his shoulders. Look, buddy, he said, his voice dropping a notch. You don't want to mess with the owner of this island. Real powerful dude. Wouldn't want to get on his bad side, now would ya? Mildred, finally piecing together the situation, leaned forward, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. Oh, surely there can't be any harm in staying a little longer. Mark turned towards me, his face softening as he recognized me. He gave a crisp salute. Ms. Labert, he boomed, his voice echoing across the water. Your private plane is ready and waiting. Shall we head to the airstrip? The air crackled with tension. William's face drained of color while Mildred's jaw dropped like a stone. This was it, the moment of truth. A grin stretched across my face. Walking towards Mark, I threw my arms around him in a tight hug. Thank you, Mark. You and the rest of the security team did a fantastic job. He chuckled, a touch awkward under my affection. Just doing my job, Ms. Labert. William, finally finding his voice, sputtered. Wait a minute, Labert? What the? Ignoring him, I followed Mark, my heart soaring. The world seemed brighter, the air lighter. As we walked, Mark added casually, planes all fueled up and ready to take you wherever you need to go, Ms. Labert. Behind us, Mildred let out a strangled gasp. You're the daughter of... She didn't need to finish the sentence. The truth hung heavy in the air. William, finally grasping the situation, lurched after me. Barbara. Wait. Please, come back. His voice was laced with a desperation I wouldn't have believed possible just hours ago. But I kept walking, a newfound strength propelling me forward. Their apologies, their pleas, were mere background noise now. The hum of the approaching plane was a symphony of liberation, carrying me towards a life on my own terms. The next morning, with the taste of freedom still sweet on my tongue, I marched into the office of a cutthroat divorce lawyer, a shark I'd specifically chosen for this particular feeding frenzy. He sifted through some documents, a sly grin spreading across his face. Hold on a second. Seems like during your little stint at William's precious company, you masterminded a few multi-million-dollar deals. Funny thing, though. No bonus mentioned in your contract, is there? A slow burn ignited in my chest. They hadn't just underestimated me, they'd tried to steal from me. The lawyer, sensing my rising anger, patted my hand. Don't you worry, darlin'. We'll get you everything you deserve. Divorce settlement, backdated bonuses, the whole shebang. True to his word, the divorce was swift and merciless. William, looking like a deflated balloon, sat across from me, his bravado replaced by a hangdog expression. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who wouldn't blink at a dragon, awarded me a hefty settlement, including the backdated bonuses my ex so conveniently forgot to pay. As I walked out of the courtroom, a vindicated smile plastered on my face, I bumped into William. His eyes were red-rimmed, his once arrogant posture slumped. Barbara, he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. They're all laughing at me. My friends, everyone. I miss you. He reached for me, but I flinched back. The pathetic plea only strengthened my resolve. Miss me? I scoffed. You never saw me, William. You were too busy listening to your precious mommy to see the woman you had right in front of you. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. Here's some free advice, William. Maybe listen less to your mother and more to the strong, capable woman you marry next time. Assuming there is a next time. The next day, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed Mildred. A humorless laugh escaped my lips. This woman had a lot of nerve. Barbara, darling, she purred, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. William is simply heartbroken. Can't you see it in your heart to forgive him? Start all over again? The audacity of the woman. I threw my head back and laughed, a genuine, unrestrained laugh that bubbled up from deep within. Forgive him? Start over? Mildred, honey, the only thing starting over is my life, and it won't involve either of you. Before she could launch into another one of her manipulative pleas, I cut her off. This conversation is over. And by the way, your number is now blocked. With a final click, I ended the call. The air crackled with anticipation as I stood in the doorway of my new foundation's office. Here, on these walls, hung the dreams of aspiring entrepreneurs, their ideas waiting to be nurtured and launched. This was my new battlefield, and this time I was fighting for the good guys. Thanks to the generous settlement and some shrewd investments, money wasn't a concern. But more importantly, the court case had unearthed a wellspring of determination within me. I wouldn't just rebuild my life, I'd help others build theirs. The Barbara Evans Foundation would be my weapon against mediocrity, a launchpad for those with talent and ambition. The first day of operation was a whirlwind. Hopeful faces flooded the office, each carrying a unique vision, a burning desire to make their mark on the world. Mentors milled about, offering guidance and encouragement, the air buzzing with a collective sense of purpose. Just as the day was winding down, the office door swung open, and a familiar figure walked in. My jaw dropped. It was Dad. He chuckled at my stunned expression. What, surprised your old man can find his way around without a map? A wave of warmth washed over me. Dad, what are you doing here? He pulled me into a hug, his familiar scent a balm to my soul. Thought I'd come see how the big boss lady is running things. He winked. Besides, your fancy foundation doesn't need another broke dreamer on its payroll, does it? I laughed, the tension easing from my shoulders. Dad, it's not about money. This is about giving people a chance. He nodded, his gaze turning serious. And you, sweetheart, are giving yourself a hell of a chance. I know, things didn't exactly go according to plan with William. Shame colored my cheeks. I should have listened to you, Dad. He squeezed my hand. Nah, listen. Sometimes you gotta learn the hard way. That's life. But the important thing is, you learned. You came out the other side stronger, wiser. He looked around the office, his eyes twinkling with pride. This is something special, Barbara Evans. Something you built yourself. And no matter what life throws your way, remember, you've always got a home here, with me." As he turned to leave, I grabbed his arm. "Thanks, Dad," I whispered, the words thick with gratitude. "For everything." He smiled, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Anytime, kiddo. Anytime." With a final wave, he disappeared out the door, leaving me with a renewed sense of purpose. The future might be uncertain, but with the lessons learned and the love of my family, I knew I could face anything.